Well, then actually I will ask the question from the person from the United Kingdom first. That was a question that was asked to me on my website, and it is from the United Kingdom. And he writes, I would like to ask if grief gives high entropy. I'm grieving the loss of my son. He died in September 2013, aged 12. I love him so much, and I've been very interested in near-death experiences, and I came across My Big Toe and started reading the books. I would like to ask Tom Campbell, does he have an opinion on NDEs, near-death experiences? Has he experienced anything like these people have experienced? I promise not to believe or disbelieve him, I just want to know. My goal is to find out if I will be reunited with my son one day. Could Tom give an answer on this, please?
Sure, there's about 5 questions there. I'll try to remember all. The first one was about grief. Is grief a process? Is it a high entropy process? And the answer is no, but that depends on, to what extent you take it. So, grief is a pretty normal reaction to something that is difficult for us to understand or accept. And that's all right. Part of the acceptance process is going through the grief. But if grief leads to acceptance, and it does that in let me just say, a reasonable amount of time, then the grief is a good thing. It's part of a process that you use to find acceptance and then go on. On the other hand, grief sometimes can go on for too long, and you never do find acceptance, and then the grief is not productive. And if it's not productive and lasts too long, it can be a high entropy process. It can be destructive if you never get to the point where you can accept and go on. So it depends. Grief by itself is neither good nor bad as far as entropy goes. It's really how much of it's sort of why you're doing it. Again, it's the intent. How much of it is feeding your ego, and how much of it is you just saying goodbyes and dealing with the change, dealing with the loss, and then going on. So it can be an effective process, and it can be a pathological process. It depends on the individual. Yes, NDEs are real things. It's not just people, make this up or imagine it. What an NDE experience is like has a lot to do with the understanding and beliefs and worldview of the person who has it. So, for instance, many NDEs, they travel through tunnels that there are no tunnels to travel through. That is just a metaphor for having to go from where you are to another place. It's a metaphor for the travel, because you kind of see the walls of the tunnel moving beside you. Interpret that as you moving through the tunnel, and it allows you to move. Without that, you feel movement is impossible and you can't go anywhere. So there's metaphors like that, and of course there's the metaphor of the bright white light, which is your interpretation of the entity that maybe will greet you or meet you, or that are representing the larger consciousness system. Kind of depends on the individual and what their needs are and what their beliefs are as to what an individual gets. But yes, these are real experiences, and they can be anywhere from almost trivial to totally life-changing. Now, will you be reunited with your son? To that question, I'd say you don't have to wait until you die. That's something you can do in your mind, in your consciousness. You can connect with your son. You can ask the questions and see how he is, and get some sense of what's going on in his head and whatever. You can make that connection with your consciousness. Learn to meditate. Get into a state as close as you can approximate to what I call point consciousness, which is you are just open to information. You're not thinking or judging or analyzing or doing anything with your mind. Your mind is still, and you're not plugged into the sense data that you're getting through your senses. Not that you can't necessarily hear the traffic outside in the street. It's just that you're not paying any attention to it. You're not attached to it. So, and eventually, as you become not attached to it, you'll see that it actually disappears. It goes away. So, if you get to that state and then just have an intention to interact with your son, to have a communication with him, and then wait. And don't judge immediately. Oh, was that real? Am I making that up? Leave that for later. Just have the communication. Don't judge it and analyze it. Try to decide whether you're making it up or it's real. Just have it. Enjoy it. Go with it. And do that dozens of times. Eventually, you will have created enough data, enough experience with this communication link that you can then judge whether or not, it's something that's in your imagination or something that's outside of you. But if it's a very useful communication, then it doesn't really matter what the source is. So you don't have to wait until you die in order to have this conversation with your son. Now, your son will eventually just move on. He has, other things to do, other lives to live, if you will, and he's not going to just hang around, waiting for your death. And you shouldn't go out and plan a death, waiting to trying to get in touch with him sooner. That would be a real bad idea. So what you will find and how you can interact with him even after he's moved on is with his data, okay, his image, if you will, in the database, which is all of him. It's not just information like you can think of in a book in a library, but it's every feeling, every idea, thought. It would be him. Everything that you know of him is there, is captured. And you can interact with it. You can ask questions. You can talk. You can get information. You can tell him how you're doing. You can do all these kinds of things with it, just like it was there. But it is information in a database. So that database has no free will. Other than the free will, it's identical to your son. And it's all there, all the emotional content's there, all the knowledge, all the feelings. So it's everything that you really need to deal with. But like I say, no need to deal with that later. You can learn to deal with that now. But you do have to have a good, open attitude. You can't be having an expectation. If you have a very high expectation of what's going to happen, that expectation will get in the way of it happening. You have too much ego attached to a particular result, that will get in the way. You just have to do it with the idea that you just see what happens, and you just open, and then if you get some kind of connection, just go with it. Just work with it. So that would really be my kind of advice on how to connect with your son, and a conversation with your son now would help immensely with the grieving process. So hopefully those two may take care of each other.
Okay, thank you, Tom, for the answer, and I'll make sure that it reaches Paul.